LSC597, this is Maria. I am making a video for my book review, so I want to tell you a little bit about the book and how I felt about it, and talk a little bit why I decided to do a video, and then talk a little bit about my personal experiences as a fan, because that has to do with the book. The book's called Fans, Bloggers, and Gamers by Henry Jenkins. It's separated into 3 sections. The first section is about fan theory. It talks about why people are fans, what people get out of being a fan, and how people come to adapt different characters, plots for their own purposes. He's mainly talking about fan fiction here. That section is called Inside Fandom. He uses it really to defend fans and their beliefs and opinions. He talks about how previously, when academics tried to talk about fans, they did so in a very negative way. They represented fans as sort of just psychotic and with really frivolous interests that were somehow not as important as that of academics. And as a fan, he sets out to sort of get rid of that mindset. So that's the first section. The second section is called Going Digital and talks about how fans have taken Web 2.0 things and used them for their own purposes. He spends a lot of time talking about fan forums and especially how they can be used as a way of forming a collective intelligence, meaning that, say, for example, the show Lost. After an episode of the show, people would go online and say, in case you missed it, here's what happened. And they would point out little bits of information that they noticed and maybe had interpreted it as a clue to what was going to happen in future episodes. So they would say, did you catch this? What do you think it means? They would also use it as a way to try and beat the creators of their own game. That's why Lost is a really good example for this, because the storyline was so, it was like a maze. It was all over the place. So fans were constantly trying to determine what was going to happen next before it happened, sort of to prove how impressive a fan they were. And so he also talks a little bit about blogging, very briefly. He talks about online dating, very briefly. And that's what he really focuses on for Web 2.0. The third section is called Columbine and Beyond. In that section, he talks about video games and media viewed by children, and the common belief that it leads children and teenagers to violent behavior. He doesn't agree with that at all. He thinks that a lot of things come into play when a child or a teen behaves that way, but the least of all is their media viewing habits. He talks about a couple experiences that he had, one speaking in front of Congress and one speaking on the Phil Donahue show, where in both cases he was brought there almost as a sort of a scapegoat, as the only person who represented that point of view, and everybody else sort of was there to say, well, look, only one guy agrees with, there's only one guy on that side, and we have all these people. So obviously those were very negative experiences for him, and he talks about that. He also talks about how parents, rather than shutting down their children's media viewing, they can use that as a springboard to talk about things that are difficult for their children to talk about. They can use the characters on the show instead of themselves, and that makes it easier for them to talk about tough things. So that section was really interesting. The book itself, I liked it a lot. I would recommend it to anyone interested in pop culture, like the base of people that it would appeal to. It was really broad. It's not too high-tech or anything like that. It's really easy to understand. I really like the first section. I am a longtime fan myself, so obviously I'm on the side of we're not crazy. I liked what he had to say about fandom as a community building exercise. I thought that was really interesting too. I really like the third section, as I said. It deals with a lot of current issues and things that matter to libraries, like censorship, things like that. So I could really easily apply that to library issues. The middle section about digital technologies, I liked it. It seemed a little bit out of date. The book was published in 2006, so a lot of things have changed since then. It seemed like he didn't have a whole lot to go off of. Like his section on fan forums, it seemed like there were only a few that he had to look at that time, as compared to now where there are hundreds, thousands. And his very short section about blogging, it seems like it was written right as blogging was taking off. So obviously a lot has changed since then, but he does a good job of representing how fans use media and digital technologies, and that's really what the book is about. So yeah, it's good for its own purpose. I think that it could be updated, but for what it is, it's good. I chose to do a video in part because it goes along with fan technologies. If you go on YouTube, you can find fan videos for everything and everyone from Lady Gaga to Star Trek. I looked for some X-Files ones. There were some pretty good ones out there. So yeah, it's a technology that fans have been using for a long time. I also wanted to use it because it's really personal, and I'm going to talk about my experiences as a fan, and I was really nervous about making a video, so I tried to look into like every other thing I could possibly do, just so, you know, people wouldn't have to be looking at my face. But this seemed to make the most sense, so I decided to go with it. This is actually just part of my book review. I also wrote a fan fiction piece about like an imagined dinner with Henry Jenkins and the questions that I had for him after reading the book. And I'm going to post that on my blog. And I chose fan fiction obviously for the same reason that I chose the video. It's something that fans have been doing for a long, long time. It's something that Henry Jenkins discusses at length in the book, and I sort of wanted to try my own hand at it for fun, so that's the reasoning behind that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences as a fan. Everybody knows from my Twitter name that I love the X-Files. I am what is known as an X-File, spelled this way. That's sort of the fan-accepted name for fans of the X-Files. I've been a fan of a lot of things in my life, and I was trying, after reading the book, I tried to think about some things that the experience has had for me in common, and the one that sort of bound them all together was that I'm always introduced to the movie, TV show, band, whatever, from somebody else. In the case of the X-Files, it was a friend from college who said, you know, I really think you'd be interested in it, you might want to try it out, give it a try. And I did, and that's what started that whole thing. Before that, I was introduced to a lot of things from my brother. He would be watching a movie or listening to music, and I would go into his room and say, is this something that you like? Can I like it too? And usually what happened after that would be that I would then ruin it for him by listening to the music or watching the movie repeatedly until he never wanted to watch it or hear it again. But that's a major part of fandom for me, is that it always comes from somebody else, whether willingly or unwillingly, and it comes from them, and I take it and interpret it in my own way and make it something that means something to me. Another part of fandom for me is the merchandise. Anything and everything that I can get my hands on, I will. I have, for example, this little X-Files book. I also have a book of postcards and like a trivia X-Files book. And I have the seasons of the show. I have a couple shirts, and I have a couple posters. The poster's my favorite. So I love having all that stuff and using it to show people something about me. It's almost a conversation starter in itself, because if someone sees you with the shirt or whatever, they'll say, oh, you know, X-Files, yeah, I love it too. Although that doesn't happen very often anymore, since I sort of caught on to that like 10 years too late. But it's a way to, you know, get a conversation started with somebody. I've never been in a situation where my fandom is something that starts the friendship in the first place. Henry Jenkins talks about that a little bit with fan forums and how people meet there and form friendships or even relationships based on that, and they met because of being a fan of the same thing. I don't really participate in the fan forums or anything like that, so I've never had an experience like that before, but I've definitely used it as a way to find common ground with someone after I've met them. So that's really what fandom is to me. My biggest fan experiences were probably when I was a lot younger. I used to love the movie Annie. That was huge. We had like a whole bunch of, we had like the Annie board game and like a whole bunch of dolls and like all the like antique stuff that I could find. And then a couple years later, when I was in 6th grade, Titanic, that was major. So excited for Titanic in 3D, it's gonna be awesome. And then X-Files, I think, probably the next biggest one after those two. So yeah, I sort of go from thing to thing, and whatever thing it is always a huge part of my life. And it's just something to take and, you know, view it in your own way. And, you know, put your own spin on it. Make it something that's about you. And that's really what being a fan is to me. So I think that's about it. I hope you enjoy the fan fiction. And I've been looking at other people's reviews and stuff. They're all really good. And I guess that's it.